Here we go.
Hey guys, welcome to the MMO Grind. He did not give me a countdown, so I just kind of stumbled into that one. That was fantastic.
I got to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, across from me, there's the jackass who just kind of screwed me over on the intro, Zaylin. And stuck in the middle here is our guest, Swipper. He's a YouTuber that mostly talks about Camelot Unchained, but also does some videos on some other video game products out there, Core Punk, ESO, etc. Tonight we'll be talking about CSE's new product, Ragnarok. Yay! Everyone's so excited about this product. It is so just got somebody so motivated and so into.
How many viewers did we
following
just lose?
Yeah, I mean, they all just quit.
The whole
We're
chat
talking
room,
about
the whole room.
what crap. All right. And we'll be interviewing Swipper, a little bit about everything he does, a little bit about his history, but then we'll really get into ideas we have, and specifically Swipper has, on making Ragnarok a better game. We want to basically throw out some ideas. We'd love to hear from your ideas as well in the comments and talk about trying to get it to be a good game. Now, to be fair, we've only seen alpha footage of Ragnarok, so who knows what CSE actually has planned, but I would like to at least have people's voices out there so they can maybe pick through them and add some good ideas to the game. From there,
once again, a lovely disclaimer: we are not CSE people. Anything that we say that we want to see or that should be in there isn't necessarily in there. We're not speaking for CSE. Blah blah blah. We're just some schmucks with video cameras. So there we go.
I don't even have a video camera. It's just it's a webcam, man. I mean, it's a nice webcam. I mean, it's a Logitech, but
there you go. Yeah.
Well, you can tell I haven't made it big yet because I don't have the actual camera rig that those top streamers have. I wish I had that money.
Maybe one day.
Yeah. One day. Remember, tell your friends. Oh, damn, we just lost 3 people off the show. Sorry. All right. Maybe we'll talk about something else.
We didn't even say Linuxification once yet.
Yeah, no shit.
Already, huh?
All right. Well, let's start in with Swipper here. So tell us, first of all, what got you into MMOs and how long you've been playing?
So honestly, I've been playing MMO since really Guild Wars 1. I've always been a fan of like the RTS games like StarCraft, Warcraft, and RPG games like Final Fantasy. So I think when I first started playing an MMO, like you could actually see other people like leveling up with you and partying up with you. Like that's what kind of stuck with me, because the whole process of actually leveling a character and sticking points places and choosing abilities and things like that, that's kind of really what drew me in to basically, I think it was Guild Wars 1. And I guess I'll go a little bit of my history through some of the MMOs and how I kind of ended up with CU, so everybody has an understanding. So like I said, I started with Guild Wars 1. That game was fantastic because my computer was absolutely crap and I didn't have a job, so I couldn't pay a monthly fee. And basically, it was awesome. So
it was one of the first games that was hyper instanced. For those that have not played it, it is it's really good on the machine because you're not trying to support the whole entire world. You actually load into instance maps to go do questing with groups. So
is that what it's called? See, I always call it like lobby based, but that's good. That's good. So basically from Guild Wars, it kind of spoiled me because you could kind of, pick 2 classes and kind of merge them together, which was awesome, which you don't really see too often nowadays.
Depends on what you want to play.
Yeah. So eventually WoW became a thing, and I was familiar with WoW because I played Warcraft. And that game basically blew me away because it wasn't instant space. It was, you go through the map, everything's there, there's no loading zones, and it was just so easy to pick up. Eventually, I just became addicted to MMOs. I wouldn't even play console games anymore. I've played just about every MMO that's come out, like Ion, Rift, WildStar, City of Heroes, City of Villains, DC Universe Online, Final Fantasy 11, Final Fantasy 14, Guild Wars 2. Like I've played them all, whether it was for a couple weeks or a year or two. So eventually my buddies introduced me to Dark Age of Camelot. Now, coming from WoW to Dark Age of Camelot was really tough because everyone's like, well, you need to write macros. I'm like, the hell's a macro? Like, what are you talking about, right? And they're like, you need to stick to people when you're fighting them, and you need to fall. And I was like, what? What are you guys talking about, right? So, long story short, I started to see the makeup of that game, like how diverse the classes were and the realms. There were 3 realms, like holy shit, 3 realms, and they were all different for the most part. And it was insane. So they really showed me, like they opened up this path, and that eventually got me into Warhammer, which I absolutely loved, even though it had its flaws. I loved that. And then when Mark Jacobs
Yeah.
came out and made CU, I was like, well, hey, Dark Age of Camelot was pretty badass, and I loved my Shaman and Warhammer. Like, this is going to be a fucking good game. Like, it's going to be a really good game. So that's kind of how I ended up, getting into CU. And as a YouTuber, I've been following CU for a really long time. I started to see the decline in people making content, so I just decided to say, hell, like, let me make some content because I'm not seeing it anywhere. So that's kind of where I'm
hard
at.
to find content anymore to like make
It's
content on.
yeah,
That's the rough part.
So where do
Trust
you?
me,
Where do
we
you?
started as a CU channel, and we decided to have to branch out just for more material.
oh yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
think it's
grew
just a
beyond
drought of
it too.
information.
So where do you dig most of your information from for CU?
Gosh, I guess my imagination. I mean, I'll look up like what I like to do is go on the forums and look up topics and see what people are talking about. Like a good topic is zerging. Like, how are they going to prevent zerging? I don't know how many times I've heard people say, well, how are you going to prevent zerging? How are you going to do this? And they usually respond the same way every time. So I wanted to make a video on zerging and what the map is going to look like, because we have some information on the map, but we don't have a lot. So it's a lot of theory, but I try and relate it in a sense to what's relevant and what's important in this game, and like what really needs to work for this game to be possible,
So what is their canned response to preventing zerging?
So essentially, like, so one of the things, if you guys played Warhammer, I'm not sure, like the collision.
Yeah,
So
just a little bit. Yeah.
just a little bit, yeah, just a little
He was
bit.
a dev for Warhammer.
Oh, get out of here, were you?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
All the dark elf and high elf quests, that was all built by moi.
Oh, dude, that's badass.
And all the broken shit. So if it's broken, it's him.
It's all the
No, I kept trying to get on the PvP team. They wouldn't let me. I was like, I was too much of a voice of my own.
So, okay, sorry, repeat the question.
What is their canned response?
Okay, so yeah, the collision detection. So when people are running in massive groups, they're going to be bumping into each other. It's going to stop them. So that's one of the things. AoEs also. So AoEs, I don't think is going to have a cap. So like in Dark Age of Camelot, there was that AoE mez. Now I thought that was a brilliant idea because like in Guild Wars 2, there's a cap to your AoE stuns. So
they're just reducing them again.
Yep.
Yep.
So you can have like 50 people run through one of those AoE things, and only like 5 people or 10 people get caught in it. Yep. That's not going to stop a Zerg, right? Like, so I think they're not going to have a cap on like AoEs and like how much damage is done. And I'm trying to think of some other things. I think like having choke points in the map themselves, also spreading out the map in the keeps. So like another point that you made on your video, Malice, was in Guild Wars 2, the keeps are like almost on top of each other.
Right.
So when you're running as like a 5-man, you're going to hit a Zerg. Like it's inevitable. Right. You can't. And everybody in Guild Wars 2 has speed boosts, right? So everybody can move quick. Whereas in Camelot Unchained, you're going to have the support class essentially giving everybody a speed boost. So not everybody is going to move that quick.
Right.
They also have like limited teleportation. So you can't teleport everywhere on the map whenever you want. So that's going to limit your how you can defend something and how you go from point A to point B. So I think there's always going to be Zerging, but I think they're going in the right steps, honestly, to prevent it, or to do as much as they can to prevent it.
Bobo brings up a good point that Veil Storms will happen a lot faster on huge Zerg battles. So if you want to avoid the Veil Storm, then reduce your size.
I guess the one conflict I have with that whole entire concept and statement is that they're working on an engine to support thousands of players on the screen. why would you possibly contemplate making a system to stop Zerg? Zergs is literally your bread and butter at this point.
Poke the bear.
Because if you cannot support the Zerg, I mean, like, why would you? Oh yeah, I'm going to stop now before I.
No, it's a valid point. Like it is, but there's always going to be Zergs. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, right.
It's always going to exist.
I honestly think that as long as, like Dark Age of Camelot, where things were spread out enough, every group type has a purpose. There's nothing wrong with Zergs. Zergs fulfill a purpose, particularly in a siege style game. You just need them. That is what the castle combat is about, is a Zerg and maybe less than a Zerg hiding inside, praying that somebody shows up and helps them because there's 300 guys knocking on the door outside. Help me! Yeah, but that's I was always curious as to why people were playing Camelot Unchained, or looking to play Camelot Unchained, and then being like, "How are you going to stop Zergs?"
Yeah.
Like they want thousands of people. All right. So Ragnarok.
Yes. And then we see through Ragnarok, through that same lens, and this is where I get to flip that script. Hey, they're going to do it with NPC models, and they're going to use that engine to create thousands and thousands of NPC models to rush at you, which, mind you, are a lot easier to render than, say, 1,000 unique players. But from what we saw in the alpha content that they announced, I don't know to you, but does it look like a game that to me, it was like a game I was like, well, I could play that for about 10 minutes and then I would never log back in because it's just a bunch of mobs rushing at a tower. And you shoot them, and it looks highly uninteresting at that point. There was a couple of things that grab on the ground that didn't honestly seem to even do much, like the traps and stuff. When they were showing them, they're like, they put out a trap. Oh, it killed 3 things, but your flame arrow is killing 23 things. Why would you stop to set up a bomb when we could just shoot another arrow? Like,
shoot another arrow across the freaking map, for that matter.
Right. Yeah, like, so, like, conceptually, it seemed like it has some level of potential. Like there could be something made of this, but from what we did see, it was so simple that I think that's part of why everyone freaked, because they didn't see the viability of the game. And if everyone could be a game developer and have the mind of a game developer and come up with great ideas and everything like that, well, then we'd probably have more games in the world. But so the reality is, what do you think could be added to this game that would make it fun and exciting?
So I've got a couple ideas, and we don't have to go through all of them, but I'll start firing some off and we'll see how far we go. I agree with you 100%. When I first saw this game, I was like thinking, hey, maybe a couple of friends and I can join this and we'll play a couple of minutes. But I mean, that's it. Like, where's the motivation? I mean, just jumping into a game mode, defending a tower, and then game ends, and then you do it all over again. I mean, I know that's very simplistic, and I agree with you. Maybe I can't justify this because I've never played it, but I can only go off of what I've seen, and that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. So my first idea was to add factions or realms to this game. Now, the realms don't really need to correlate with the CU, but for my example, let's kind of correlate it with CU, right? So when you log into the game, you're going to be asked to pick a faction, whether it's the Vikings, TDD, or the Ithurians. Now, of course, I'm going to pick the Vikings because that's my faction. That's what I'm doing. That's my realm, right? And this faction will be linked to your this faction will be linked to your account. So what we know and from what my understanding is that there's going to be progression for your count, and then there's going to be progression per game that you play, kind of like League of Legends, where every time you jump into a game, you go from like 0 to whatever the max level is, and then when you're done with that game, you get XP towards your actual count, right? So now that we have all that like incorporated in this game, and they're going to have leaderboards and things like that, so they're tracking your stats, right? So let's say you play a game and you start it and you finish it and you're fighting for the Vikings. You're going to get this currency called like realm points. I'm kind of stealing. I think that's what it's called in Dark Age, right? Realm
Yep.
points. So I'm kind of stealing it from there. You get these realm points, right? And you want to accumulate these realm points. And by accumulating these realm points, you're kind of getting that server pride, like, hey, I'm fighting for the Vikings. Like, I'm
Right.
playing this game to get these points. Now, this kind of leads into my second idea where when I play a game, I can't just play a game that has one objective and that's it. Like, I need to play a game that has multiple objectives that kind of feed off each other, that have a main objective. The whole reason for me doing these objectives is to hit this main objective, right? So if you guys ever played this game called For Honor, it's like a fighting game, kind of a brawler game.
Haven't played it, but I've seen lots of video for it. I know what it is and what it's about.
Okay. So you pick a faction, and every time you start a game and finish a game, you get points towards your faction. And there is this overall map that you can dump your points in. And this map has territories on it. So each territory can be owned by a certain faction or realm. Sorry, I'm interchanging faction and realm a lot.
It's the same thing, though, in this
Yeah.
case.
How dare you?
So you're essentially, what you want to do as a faction or realm is dominate this map, get all the points, as much as like put all the points in these territories, and by defending them and taking them, kind of like what we're going to be doing in CU to begin with, like how it's all going to be like islands and shifting islands and taking each island and kind of progressing forward. So let's say this map has a like shelf life or like a reset time, and let's say it's for a month. I mean, it can be any given time, whatever. So at the beginning of the month, towards the end of the month, each realm can invest as many points as they have. Now, the only way to get these points is by playing these games, right? So you want to play these games to get these points to level up your count and, yada, yada. So at the end of the month, the map will get tallied up, and whatever faction owns the most territory will get like something special, whether that is cosmetics, whether it's an item. Like, I don't really know exactly what rewards we're going to get, but it sounds like maybe it's going to be cosmetics and things like that, because they don't want any pay to win features or anything like that. So let's say that it opens up a new game mode, right? And it's opened up for 2 weeks. And let's say it's like a tower defense game, but after, let's say, 5 waves of these crazy mobs coming at you, and you win like those 5 rounds, a boss will like drop in, like a boss that they can use from like the depths. So we know in the depths that they're going to have these bosses that we're going to be able to kill, that are going to have mechanics. Well, why not use those bosses that they're going to develop, put them in there, and have them act kind of like in Final Fantasy 14 when you fight primals. I don't know if you guys ever played that, but I love those primal fights where they have things like that. Have them do something like that. So when you get to that final stage, you have something challenging and something that's worthwhile to fight, and make it really hard to do. And
there should be, following that same logic, I would like to see like wave sub bosses, and like say, so if you do 10 waves or something like that, do a little boss that is the leader for each wave, then you do like a mini boss for at wave 5, and then you like an uber boss at wave 10 or something like that.
Yeah. So this kind of gives people incentive to say, hey, like, I could spend an hour or two and do this, and then maybe next week they're like, hey, let me see what this map is like. And I know JB was on with you guys before, and he made a really good point. He said, if you can incorporate like an app or something that gets people to, walk away from the game and think about the game and keep thinking about the game, like, that is key. And I remember one thing that I loved from Guild Wars 2 was they had a world versus world map app, and you could track what keeps were getting taken and what keeps you owned. And I would look at that thing all the time at work and be like, oh shit, like, dude, I gotta get home and like take this thing, man. Like, I mean, it's stupid, but
dude, I'm sick, I'm leaving early, ciao.
And they could I think they could potentially do something like that with this kind of map, and it would keep people engaged and keep people wanting to come back more, in my opinion. So those were kind of my 2 main ideas. So I don't know if you guys want to sit around, talk about it, or if you want me to move on. I've got a couple more ideas, but
Yeah, the definitely the point system, having the long progression as and as someone Sahaku kind of mentioned there is, and I think this is where you were alluding to, where you also level up the character itself besides leveling your account, as it were. And that would be where you unlock new abilities. You're unlocking it's like every other first person shooter or anything like that. Access to new guns, access to new scopes, all that kind of stuff. The same idea. Oh, I can get flame. No, now I can get ice arrows. Now I can do whatever. I can unlock cool abilities like that. Also, wave bosses, definitely pretty simple, but very solid plus. Keeps things interesting, especially if all of a sudden, instead of the idea of there's so many mobs, at least that were in the alpha, that like you really are playing solo with a specific purpose. Like, so you have a group purpose, but your game, you have to spread out enough to make sure you can control everything. That it would be nice to have that boss where it would bring all the players to the singular location to battle it, which would be really fun as well. So definitely support both of those ideas, and I think that that's the only way to really make it interesting and competitive. I'm not even sure that you have to do a map, though. A map is a really cool idea where you could, especially because this is at least my take from what I got from the storyline of what they're doing with Ragnarok. Is Ragnarok is going to be the precursor story to Camelot Unchained. It's the fall. It's the eruption of all the undead, now all this horrible stuff, and the ripping apart of basically the realms, and where magic and everything kind of puts it back together, and that's why they're now floating on energy and everything like that.
So why not take these two games and kind of link them together in such a way that as your faction or realm or whatever we want to call it in Ragnarok progresses, does these things with the maps, it gives your realm bonuses in CU, and then as you control Frontier or whatever we want to call it in CU, that also directly affects your map within Ragnarok. And so there's kind of a balance that they've got to do there, which would force people to play both because you obviously want bonuses from both.
Which I think comes with its own negative, which is that there are just people who aren't big into MMOs. They don't really want to play an MMO.
No, but like, those same people would probably love
of raider, 10 people in a map or something like that fighting, even 20 or 30, a PUBG style, like whatever, instanced gameplay is very popular. I mean, look at there's the bread and butter of Fortnite and PUBG and Escapes of Kharkov or whatever it's called now, and all those types of games where it's just small amounts of people fighting over matches. And I think that people are more excited about that. They like the disposable game experience. They're
okay,
like,
so why
flowers, walk away?
Why can't you still have that and yet link these things together?
Because people will automatically make the assumption that now I gotta care about. I don't care about that other game, so I don't really want to play this one because I don't care about that one. I mean, idea-wise, in general, it's not the worst idea, but I have a feeling that as soon as but I have a feeling in Camelot Unchained, most of the people that are being pulled into Ragnarok at this point will walk away. Like, they're going to stop playing. Camelot Unchained subscribers, people who have backed this game and everything like that, are literally just going to, this is a time killer until CU comes out. They're going to light it with a match and walk away. I mean, so I don't think it's worth having that. It's better if it stands alone. You could still have the connection story wise. You don't need to have a connection physically, in my opinion. That being said, I think that from what I saw from the races that they were running around, there was a Valkyrie and a Saracen and whatnot, that they are at least connecting it in that aspect to the realms. So something that they definitely don't want to do with the game is they don't want to make actual PvP because that's what CU is. Don't really want to make a competitive product. They don't want to fight each other. They want to fight a PvE environment, which is fine. What do you think of this idea, though? I think of a novel way of doing PvP in the game.
It's crap.
I know it's a shitty idea, but I'm going to spit it out anyway because I like shitty ideas. Yeah, that's what I do.
My goal is to
When,
completely derail his thought process as often as I possibly can.
when you have, so they showed there's basically 3 giant towers. What if each faction had a tower, and you had the ability, as Northeast was talking about in chat, where you could had kind of a siege environment. Even if you had to run out, were given a couple of minutes in the beginning. You run out, kind of Fortnite-ish, build up some defenses. Build a wall. Really play at tower defense. Be able to build walls to maybe flank the mobs off, deflect them off of your tower, and run in another tower. Have lures where you could lure them. Put brains on the ground or whatever like that. Let the zombies chase the brain train
Corpse
over
chucker.
to someone else's tower and things like that. And so your PvP wouldn't be really player versus player in that sense. It's still against the mobs, but you can basically use the mobs against the other team to like drain them of points or whatever. But also killing those zombies. It becomes a balance because killing the zombies gives you points, but if you lose your tower, you lose all your points.
Yeah, indirect PvP. There's
Right.
Yaku.
So
Yeah. No, I actually really support that idea. That was actually one of my ideas I was going to bring to the table because they focus so much, and I say they, like Mark Jacobs and their crew, they focus so much on this being a PvE game.
Right.
But this has really good potential to be a PvP game. Simply, like you said, have the 3 towers and have these enemies running at each tower and have to manipulate how these enemies are interacting with each other and building things that, like they could test so much, like the pathing and all this stuff they keep talking to us about. They could test all this stuff by doing simple things just like that,
Actually integrating Cube into something else.
Yes. Could you?
Crazy thought.
Bobo hit this on the head here. He says, "Here's an idea. Why don't they develop CU to test things for Ragnarok?" Do you think this game will develop into any sort of PvP? I mean, given the crowd that they're releasing this to, the main people going for CU are mostly ones that are looking for PvP, and you're introducing a PvE game to them. Do you think you're going to get a lot of steam without slowly or incrementally kind of putting teasers of PvP in there? Or do you really think, like Malice said, that this is going to forever stay a PvE game because they don't want to compete?
Well, I mean, what's the hurt if they make a game mode and it's PvP? Like you select your game mode and it's PvP, and then they have their PvE game mode, and all they do is they leave it out there for a month or 2 and run statistics. See how many people are jumping into that PvP versus the PvE. I mean, I think it's something easily trackable. And honestly, with Mark Jacobs in general and how brilliant he is with Dark Age, and I loved Warhammer. I don't care what anybody says. I really loved it. They
I'll say thank you for Mark.
they have to add PvP to this game. I don't see why not. I really don't.
It would be stupid. It would be stupid not to. I mean, the infrastructure's there. Everything that is necessary for it is there, and it's like we look at the game and go, PvP. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Is why can't we do that? I think for them to not to is just.
I think Sahaku brings up a perfect point. So this game already existed once. It was called Fortnite. Fortnite was a PvE game. No, Fortnite was a PvE game. Then they put PvP in the game.
Yeah.
And the idea was very successful for the PvE, but all the people piled on the PvP and the PvE died. I think they're even like, they charge you for it now.
They do. I got to be honest with you.
I'm with you, North.
Honest with you. When I jumped into Fortnite for the first time, I mean, I hate the game. I'm sorry, but I do. Like, I just can't play it. I noticed that the PvE you had to pay for. I'm like, wait a minute, you get the PvP for free, but PvE's for, like, you got to pay for that? Like, why? Like, I don't know. It boggled my mind.
Because PvE takes development cost. That's a great thing about PvP. You basically put 40 idiots or however many idiots you want in a room, shake and see what happens, as opposed to PvE, which is, oh, we have to come with new and interesting content and new interesting mobs and new and interesting everything else. Because, I mean, that's really something that I think I said last show about Ragnarok 2 is that we better see 20 character classes and 100 different mob types, because if there's 5 mob types and the handful of classes they've got, you want to talk about extra boring, like.
And their AI better be smart as tax, because if it's dumber than doornail like their stuff is right now, I mean, it's like hitting a stationary target almost.
Well, that's why I didn't understand. He's like, yeah, look at the AI, look at it do all this other stuff. I'm like, it's running in a Zerg wall at you.
Yeah.
You're shooting and killing it.
How's this smart AI?
I believe Unreal Engine comes with that as a basic function.
We spent 6 years developing this. They can run in a straight line. Oh, and they can go around the rocks.
And they have an aggro system, so when you shoot them, they run at you. Okay.
Bobo says, in my opinion, they should not try to make it too complex, mostly because the CU-based customers are fragilized, if that's even a word. I think they are walking on thin ice. Totally agree.
Oh.
Yeah, and I guess my counter to that is, they got these engineers, they got these artists. They're going to be working on this game no matter what. So, in my opinion, if they're going to work on this game, they got to make it fun. Because if they don't make it fun, then nobody's going to support it. And in my opinion, if nobody supports it and wants to play it, then it's only hurting them in the long run, and us. Really, everybody that wants you to.
But let me throw this question out at you. If this game flops, wouldn't you be more pissed off if this game flops? That they spent all the time, the money, developing this game, surprising us with this game, and then it flops horribly. In some sick, twisted sense, aren't you invested to see, this game better be successful, it better do well, because you took time away from developing the game that I want you to develop, which is CU?
Well, and as I said, it's advertisement. So if the advertisement fails, basically, and people go, wow, that was a garbage game, I don't think I want to play CU, because that'll be a garbage game if this is what the type of product they're putting out. So I think that it's that double-edged sword as well. Like, it has to succeed because it will draw people to CU.
Bubba says, nope. Since they wanted it first develop an MMO, and MMO are MJ's specialty. We are the cult of Daok. I mean,
all of us play DOC in this on this channel right here, right now, and most of the people probably in our chat have played that, or at least Warhammer. So I totally get it. But just trying to, without looking at MJ specifically or the company specifically, but looking at the game model that they're presenting and where to go with it and how to make it more interesting. Because it's better to have a successful game than an unsuccessful game. We've got enough unsuccessful games in the world.
Yeah.
So talk about your ideas for characters and classes and things like that that we might see or might play in the game. How would that be interesting? What are some really cool things that could work there?
Well, and this is kind of it's kind of difficult, because when I look at games like ESO versus like a Final Fantasy 14 versus Guild Wars 2, they're very like different systems. Like ESO is very like you're aiming, and Final Fantasy 14 is a very tab target, and Guild Wars 2 has that perfect balance where you're doing a little bit of both. So when you compare Camelot Unchained, their combat system versus Ragnarok's combat system, to me, it's pretty different. Now, I think they can import some classes, like they showed us, like the spirit mages, right? We got to see, kind of the spirit mage pets, and I guess how they're going to work in a sense. And, we get to see the archer and I guess like the berserker and things like that. But I guess to me, the best thing they could possibly do is take in the same exact abilities that we're going to see in CU and throw them in Ragnarok. Like, throw them in Ragnarok. however they want to disguise these classes, whatever they want to call them or whatever they want them to do, just import the same abilities. Like one of my favorite abilities from like the stone healer is like bringing up the stone in front of you, right? And it's negating everything that's coming at you. Now that's freaking awesome because that is like strategy. If somebody's almost dead and they run behind you, throw a stone up and then heal them, and you're deflecting everything. Like that would be awesome if they added things like that to Ragnarok. And again, if they do things like that, they'll be testing the game, we'll be testing CU, and we'll be helping CU. So, I mean, that's just, kind of one of my examples. But I personally don't know how or if they're going to do that, because Mark did say something about, well, as soon as we add more abilities and combos and things like that, like I don't know what direction they're really going to go into with Ragnarok. I hope they don't go in like a, completely different direction, but you know what I mean?
But I think they're gonna really take it. I think their goal is to be very class based and very rigid in what the abilities are. So you're gonna unlock abilities, you're gonna do things like that, and then it's gonna be like I said, here's your fire arrow. Okay, you unlock ice arrow. Whatever. But like abilities and things like that in CU on live, supposedly, is we're gonna have the ability to kind of build our own abilities.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna be able to. I think it would be bad to test that idea in many ways unless they want to really simplify it, and which honestly is not a horrible idea. I do like the ideas in a lot of current games that have moved into that direction where they have like Astro Arcade has like ancestral levels, and you can unlock these different choices. So like, oh, my ability does this. Well, now I can make my little fireball do shoot as lightning or shoot as ice, and it has different. Now I'm impacting how it crowd controls, how much damage it does, how fast a rate of fire I get, all those types of things, and it allows you to modify the character without significantly changing the class, and allows it to keep. It's easier to balance mechanically. So I'm not against moving in that direction either if they want to kind of more simplify it, so that even if it was like there are 5 different choices, they keep unlocking different choices and things like that to boost different abilities.
Yeah, but as Narth says, building abilities is a really great feature, but everyone's going to spec into the min-max combos anyway. Happens every game.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, the majority, but the minority will always exist that always, move around the edges. I mean, I'm that guy who builds a class who no one's ever heard of and then really ticks people off because I kill them with it. It's that's the thing, is it's like there's every MMO you've ever played, spend 1 hour sitting in public channels. There will be someone going, especially if a game's new, there'll be someone going, hey, what's the best build? Hey, what's the best build? Hey, what's the best build? And so those people exist, whether they're vocal about it in that way or they just go online and look at what the best builds are or what the recommended is, and they don't really think that far out the box. Or if they do, they think out the box later. They get started in a good build and then move on from there. But if there's options, people do explore the options. People do go into the options. Sure, 70% of the player base is all polearm knights or whatever like that, because that's the power game. That doesn't mean you won't see plenty of people who are just, I'm a tank player, I'm going to play sword and shield. I know it's not the maximum value, but guess what? In that one scenario when you really need me to hold that line, I'm your man.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be those people that are outside of whatever the norm is. And the more choices you have, though, that's the one problem with sliders and things like that, is it can wander into it. I'll leave it this way. We haven't seen them work on it enough and deploy anything really for it for us to be testing it. And that stuff needs to be excessively tested to be balanced. And it is one of those concerns I have with CU that go on the pile with floating islands, where I haven't seen the technology yet. You haven't built it yet. This is stuff you can't whip up in 2 months. This is stuff that needs to be tested for a year. And we haven't even seen it. It hasn't cracked as an idea. And so I call bullshit, and it's not going to be live. I doubt it'll ever exist. That's just my gut feeling. Because if you understand objects in a video game, the way you already spend enough time accidentally falling through creases in the world in a normal game. Imagine continents that get up and move.
Yeah.
The chaos will be impressive.
Well, Mouse, I mean, this is strictly from memory, but when I do my YouTube videos, when they were doing weekly updates, somebody actually, and I think they were from the IT group, somebody actually asked them like, "Hey, when are we going to see the islands again?" And Mark said something about Andrew, something like, I don't know, I can't explain it technically because I'm not remembering, and I got to find this video now, but something was happening where it really wasn't quite working, but it sounded like they had like the pieces in there, and it was like they could physically like see like the islands moving and things like that. I could be totally wrong, and I could be talking out my ass, but I could have sworn I heard somebody ask that, and I'll have to go back and look at that, because honestly, if they don't release the map as like this island shifting, this whole, I'm going to be really, really upset, man. Like really upset, because I think this was like
Malice,
the coolest
Skippy
idea, you know?
has got your number.
Yeah, I know. Here'll be a jump puzzles. I saw it. He's talking smack. I don't like jump puzzles. What can I say? It's what platformers are for.
Neither does Skippy. He doesn't do jump puzzles either, so.
I'll go play a platformer if I want jump puzzles. Designed for it. Yeah, but I don't know. See, like, so you said you liked Warhammer. Mm-hmm. It was also one of the big announcements. Like, it was fed to the community for years, and I was just like, as a dev, I'm like, you do understand we haven't even finished the first cities. Every race is supposed to have a city. Yeah. So when are we working on those? And we're gonna push back the release another 2 years, because at this rate, we haven't finished one city for each faction, more or less having 3 cities for each faction. So we're going to announce to the fans that there won't be 3 cities per faction. Oh. So I knew that a year ahead of time, before they like basically announced it like 2 months before launch that it wasn't going to be there. I mean, and that's kind of where I see this is, if we haven't seen it actually hitting testing, well, that's why I get frustrated when they call it beta.
We're not beta.
It's in beta. I haven't seen anything meaningful tested. I mean, siege equipment. Literally, we've been testing little things when we need to be testing basic world functionality at this point. I don't care whether, honestly, if the catapult kind of sucked at launch and you fixed it later, that would be forgivable. But if you can't make the 2 selling points of movable territory and completely buildable skills, which you're selling on a daily basis to us, then you've failed at your game. And he talks about crafting too, and that's my other concern is we haven't seen much touched on crafting. These are the 3 pillars of this game that have attracted people to it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, crafting is, can we say it's going to be at least 50% of the game? I mean, that's where all of our items are coming from.
Well, it's the purpose of all action.
Yeah.
Why do you build a castle? To protect pathways or resources, to find mines and nodes and all this other stuff like that, to defend those areas so that you can gather those resources, to send them to the main city so they can be built into awesome, new, wonderful weapons. And if that main driving force of why you're at war goes away, I mean,
Yeah, no, it absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where it's the devout's coming out next, and that leaves the crafters. That leaves the crafters, you know. And maybe they'll put in the spirit mages, maybe, but I
Oh,
think they need the crafters.
who's putting money down? I think we'll start a pool now. Um, that we'll have crafting in the game, but there will not be this magical crafting class.
Oh boy, I don't want to go there.
I'm starting the pool now. I vote that this magical crafting class will never exist, unless it is just an alt automatically on your account or something like that you get to leave in the city. I don't think that they have thought out or fleshed out enough of the ideas
Why not?
on how to make the crafting classes viable. Because if there was, we would see write-ups on them. There is no write-ups on the crafting classes. There is write-ups on every other class in this game.
Oh, but Malice, MJ has his secrets.
Well, that secret's going to bite him in the ass because it's going to be like, haha, the secret is I forgot to work on that. Anyway, so back to Ragnarok because I don't really want to turn this into just a CU bash. I've done that enough
Too
episodes
late.
on that. Too late. You know? But looking back into, I blame it on chat because they were all like,
It's all their fault.
it's all your fault.
Narthesis, it's your fault.
Yeah, I know it's always my fault. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, I like the idea, like you said, of pulling more things that we need to test in CU and throwing them in Ragnarok.
Mm-hmm.
I think adding some cube functionality, doing things like that. Because honestly, that's probably the best place to build the crafter class. Because this is what I've been saying about the crafter class since time immortal, since it's written in our original packet before they announced any of the other classes or anything like that. They just said they wanted crafter classes. We were like, make them trappers. You don't want them to be great in actual battle, but make them tricksters and trap guys, so they can like build traps on walls or slows and snares and do these crowd controls and all this other stuff through the use of traps, because that's what a builder would be able
It's
to
all
do.
passive combat. Yeah.
Right. He's fighting in passive combat. He's laying traps. He can build walls. He can help build siege. He can do all these other things. And he's still very effective and he's still viable in a combat. He needs friends to finish the job, as it were. But like, you had to do that in Dark Age anyway. You would build a class that was a blinder. That's all he ran into is blind people and nuke them. Like, okay, he was kind of screwed though if he got attacked by two other guys,
Yeah, and I think that was one of my other ideas is make a game mode
Did he stop
where these champions and allow them to like build a tower. Right?
Hey, hold on. There's
one tower.
Hold on. Start that thought over because you froze up and we missed.
Oh, sorry. Am I good now?
You're good now. Just go ahead and start over for us.
So this was one of my other ideas, right? So add a game mode in Ragnarok that allows crafters to join in, and their sole purpose is to, let's say they can build one tower anywhere they want, and each round that these hordes of enemies come in, after like the first round, you get like a minute of a break, and they can either update their tower by like building more blocks or maybe adding abilities to these towers, like it shoots like an AoE bomb or something, like, or they can build structures that act as defense while using cube, like you were saying earlier, Mouse. And this is testing their crafters at a very quick and like high level, like very. And I'm no programmer, right? I'm no QA tester. I'm none of that. But something like that sounds like a really good idea. And again, now we're seeing the crafters. Now we're seeing what they can and can't do, and, stuff like that.
So what if you went?
Excite the fan base.
So what if you went into Ragnarok and there were no towers? Like you had a spot for the towers, but there weren't actually any towers. And that crafter class, you had to go in, keep the mobs off long enough for this crafter class, or two or three of them, to come in and actually start building this tower and getting it up to the point where then it could become self-sufficient. and then you go on to the next tower, and then basically that's how you create these different tower modes, and you can set them up in a way that then leads to Malice's idea of the passive PvP, where you're basically funneling and forcing all of these NPC mobs to go and attack somebody else's tower or somebody else's area.
Yeah,
That
at
way
the end
you
of the day, it being a tower defense game, I think is the kind of the best way to take it. If you can build walls, you can build different types of towers, even if it's just turrets, like that you're
Yeah.
just sticking a pole up there with a turret on it, and you can build some defensive walls and try to funnel mobs and things like that for the builders. I think that would be a fantastic experience, especially if you could build the walls like wide enough to have walkways and stuff, so that your archers can be running along the wall, shooting down at the mobs, different things like that.
But you get someone like me in there. I'm going to start with a turret and a little wall, and then I'm going to try to create this impenetrable fortress where I just basically get to stand up there and my towers just completely destroy everything that comes up upon them.
Yeah, and like that leads also into the crafters using traps and things like that they can again incorporate all this into CU. Like
it's literally like the Fortnite PvE. It was build your little buildings, build walkways with traps, build like different pathways, so they had to walk through your little maze of traps to get to your doors and walls before they could bash down your structures. And that's the other thing, is then you mix and match that with the other classes having to go out even between waves and like running out and grabbing resources, so that the builder then can build higher quality stuff, because he may only have like brick or something like that, or whatever, and then he can start adding alloys and getting metals and different things like that, so he can build cooler turrets and different things like that instead of just walls.
Like real life field runner is really all it is.
Yeah.
You just happen to be in
the maze of death, yes.
So, chat, a few of you have seen there that Skippy and Bobo have redeemed their points for their monthly giveaway. Remember, that is a game on Steam at the end of the month. So if you want to be in on that, redeem that by the end of February. And then on our first stream in March, you will do a prize drawing out of those people that have redeemed enough points for a free game on Steam.
Nice. So what other grand ideas do you have for Ragnarok?
I mean, I think we touched on a lot of them, really. I mean, I think they need to incorporate PvP. I think they need to incorporate things that they're going to have for the depths in this game mode. I mean, overall, I think the only way this game is going to survive is if they take it past just jump in a game, defend one tower, and call it a day. Right. I mean, was introduced to like tower defense games playing like when you go on like play Warcraft and you go on like Battle.net stuff and you play people's maps and you get to literally make towers and, like you say, like funnel the mobs in certain directions, and it's actually pretty fun how creative you can get with that, and you could spend a lot of time doing something as simple as a tower defense game. You just have to have the mechanics for it. So
you got to be able to up the difficulty. That's the thing I think is going to be. I'll be curious to see how they do it. I mean, we'll keep playing the game as long as I can continue to up the difficulty in a way where it's going to kick my ass, but at the same time I can see, if I just do this, maybe I'll get lucky and complete that wave. I mean, it's the same thing with all the stupid little games that you have on your phone.
That's the thing that I think Swipper really is kind of pushing at with his PvP point, is that is the added difficulty level. You can have every wave get harder and harder and harder, and you have boss mobs to do all that stuff, but the coup de grace, that total screw you package, is how successful also is the other team and him sending his boss mob for you to have to deal with both of them, or do something like that, where or even if you want to go with Swipper and in full PvP where you can actually attack each other, so you're having to figure out how to run raids on the opponent's tower while they're defending from waves and other stuff. All of that stuff adds up to players always will add that wrinkle of difficulty that is kind of immeasurable.
You could make like wave 100, you no longer get things on yours, but you have to then go and assault their map while they're assaulting your map to kind of test the defenses that you've built up. And then wave 101, you're back to your respective maps with even harder stuff coming, but your defenses have all been royally screwed because you've got,
Yep.
So what do you guys think of, do you think when they launch this game, do you think these games are going to be something that players can actually accomplish, or do you think it's just going to get way too hard? It's going to be never ending until you die. That makes sense.
So infinite waves until such time as you reach a
like, is there going to, can you beat the game that you join? Is it possible to beat the game? Like, do you think it's going to be possible?
Because almost in a way, from the storyline aspect, you would want them to always eventually lose. Because that's the other thing, is you could have high level horde, all of a sudden, like vampire lords or whatever like that, rolling up with several minions with them and actually setting up catapults and things like that, launching your own walls, and trying to break through your terrain and stuff like that. You could constantly be upping that difficulty level to eventually create collapse. It's all about collecting the points, that who is the most successful, who lost their tower the last, and all that type of stuff.
To last as long as you can.
But I guess with your map idea, you'd probably want at least some success, or maybe do like a weekly thing. So like you could have your map, and then everybody plays, and as you win or lose, you're basically on the map. The hordes keep coming in, and whatever faction is doing better, it doesn't push in as far. So then it's all about, who fended off the hordes overall on the large map over a week, and then you reset it.
Yeah, that actually goes along with the theme a lot better.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
See, Hako said there was an arcade mode on StarCraft where you had to defend your base, where you use your resources to send mobs to the other player's base. You would love to see that game mode like that.
Actually, yeah, you could, especially since they want to test this AI. Let's let them see what the Dogs of War can actually do. Actually, build NPC generators that are like troops that you can mount on your own walls and stuff like that. But you could also build parties and send them in and raid the other guys' bases. So instead of the mobs, you would literally be creating, your faction NPC raids.
Yeah. And you know what? That actually just gives me another idea, because I remember somebody asking me questions saying, hey, like when you own a keep, can you hire NPCs and send them out to a specific location? Now, I don't think you can do that, but
I was on the stream with MJ when he put out the whole AI pathing stream, and I specifically asked him very pointed questions on that. One is, you will be able to put certain routing locations for your NPCs, so you can actually put up points of preference in your castle, so they'll stop and guard there for a while and then wander off and continue to patrol. You can also set them to have, or you can tell them to just stand there and not wander. And you can also change their aggro, so they will go after healers and ignore tanks and DPS. Things like that. So you'll be able to actually choose who they chase as their primary target. Of course, tanks will have the ability to probably taunt or whatever like that to draw them into them and whatnot. And enough damage is going to change your aggro, but their first priority turns into hunting a healer or hunting the DPS or whatever.
Yeah, and again, you can incorporate something like that into Ragnarok, right?
Yep.
So
what do you guys think of Bobo's idea here of tower offense versus tower defense?
Like building towers closer to
where as he puts it, the not dumb as rocks anymore NPCs are defending the towers, and your goal is to take the towers. So there's a throng of NPCs that are defending the towers, and you are the ones going and trying to take the towers.
So like reverse the game, essentially.
That actually wouldn't be a bad idea either, especially
pretty cool.
storyline wise, because when I saw those towers, I was like confused because they looked evil, right? They didn't look like things you would want to defend. They looked like things that would be summoning the hordes. Didn't they though? You know,
No, they did. Yeah, no, because
I mean,
yeah.
and I was like, wouldn't that be? I totally support Bobo in this. Is that let that be the point of coming out of it's basically the spawner. You're trying to spawn kill them, and so you're trying to push in, and you could give them lines of defense. Good way. It'll be you could do this as a mode, I guess. Good way to test siege, things like that, so players could get together, shoot siege, because they could start off with walls and some defenses and things like that. Blow through the walls, go for the tower, try to fight off the NPCs and everything like that, and go conquer the tower. I think actually that's probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and how much testing will we get out of? Will they get out of us doing that? They're like lining the siege up and shooting and everything. Yeah, it's a brilliant idea.
Get your crafters in there. Good job, Bobo. You get a gold star.
Someone give that man a gold star now. I wish I had a gold star functionality in this game, in this chat.
Narthesis says, or tower offense where you take your tower and drive it into the enemies.
Like on wheels or like?
Yeah, I think Narthesis is just bringing out his inner troll.
There's always one.
Narthesis is one of my resident trolls, yes.
As Bobo flexes his brain.
I collect trolls, so it's so our tower defense where you can take your tower and drive the enemies.
So Sihaku said before 18 classes for each race. Do you think that having an enormous selection of races and classes to choose from would be beneficial to the game or ultimately detrimental?
Well, look at League of Legends. Look at how many different characters you can play. Look at Overwatch. Look at how many different characters you can play. People like variety, even if it is an illusion. People like choice. Mm-hmm. And so everybody having access to, and it doesn't need to be maybe 18, but if everybody had 10 even or something like that, it would give people a lot of interesting flexibility. And especially if you're allowing like 10 people, 5 or 10 people on a team, then it would actually change a lot of your team dynamics. Like, okay, I'm going in. We want to do this. We'll say it's a 5-man group. Do 3 5-man groups. Well, do we want to better build for being able to attack our opponent's tower, or do we want to have a bunch of builders and be really super fortified, or do we want to really really aggress and push out the enemy? And all these would be based on different classes on how you want to do it. Because okay, I'm going to take a tank class, and you're going to take an AoE fireball class, and I'm going to mass taunt, draw all them and super shield, and then just watch all the mobs pour on me, and then just fireball, different combos like that could be really interesting and really exciting, but change the dynamic. Okay, we don't have a tank. We're going to have to change how we're going to look at how to do the fighting. We're going to use walls instead of players and different things like that. So the more classes you have, the more options you have, the more purpose-built classes that have very unique ideas.
You also get a lot of like replayability, right? So if you only have a set number of champions and you roll through them within a few weeks and you're kind of bored, you're just going to move on. You're going to leave. So,
which, let's be real, is probably going to happen anyway. But Johnny Clash says it's funny that nobody cares about Ragnarok as a game, just as a testing ground for CU. I don't know anything about either game. I just know a ton of people who want CU to come out. You're not wrong.
But I mean, that was, to be fair, Ragnarok was kind of sold to us as a testing ground for CU.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
that's exactly how it was sold to us.
So from that standpoint, it's not unreasonable for us to view it as such.
And be
It would
pissed
be
off
great
about it.
its own, standalone game, but then we'd be even more frustrated, I think, because then it would be really separate from the game we all paid money to be waiting on right now. 7 years.
And yeah, I think and they kept telling us, all the code that you're seeing is Camelot Unchained. This is Camelot Unchained. So
Looked a lot better than Camelot Unchained. But
hey, Ragnarok is at least playable. I will give them that.
yeah,
it is something. Staring at Cherry Keep and shooting at dumb mobs and dumb players is not exactly a grand excitement experience.
What do you got? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Please go ahead. I was just gonna read chat.
I was gonna say, what do you guys think? I know it's a little bit off topic, but what do you guys think of them giving us that new scenario with the keep in the middle and all 3 realms jumping in?
Isn't that basically what the Cherry Keep thing is right now? It's just a keep in the middle, and I mean,
yeah.
No,
I mean, with deeper than that, but
with Cherry Keep, it's you've got one faction that's in the keep defending it, and then the other 2 are kind of coming at it from either side. I think the idea of this was open world, big giant keep in the middle with no one defending it except not dumb as rock NPCs, and then it's just a free for all, kill each other while you try to take the keep at the same time.
Well, I look at it as exactly what they're going to build is a Dark Age of Camelot instance. One of the arena instances. They slap a keep in the middle. Everybody runs around the edges and fights and does everything like that. And then you can make pushes to try to take the keep. And whoever currently controls the keep, can spawn in it and fight from it and do whatever. And everybody else, tries to gain control. And if they gain control, then they're the king of the. It's basically a big game, the king of the hill. And I think it's very viable, and I mean it's a simple but can be a well executed process. And as long as there's enough terrain and area for people to strategically run around and allow solos and small groups to kind of raid the edges while everybody else kind of gathers in a big group and tries to slam into the keep or whatever like that, it can be a lot of fun.
Do you think it'll be successful, or do you think people are going to find a way just to zerg the end point and skip the whole killing part, as most games do?
Well, I mean, that's if you can get enough people together to go do it, then you are now the defender. Okay, now your role changes, so you place that position.
But at that point, once you become the defender, this new scenario is absolutely no different than the other scenarios.
But that's the fun of it. Is it's all about being able to switch to control. Instead of starting with someone in control, you could put all the NPCs in there, like you said. But as soon as it's sacked, I guess the point is: are you making the scenario so that this will run for an hour, or are you looking for the scenario to be live and just running? And if it's live and just running, then you want castle capture, because then people get bored, start logging out. Other people will log in, then the castle will fall into control of somebody else. And the nice thing about this scenario, especially with castle control, is that it allows players they can put it up on a server and let it run for 72 hours or whatever like that, and actually allow people to come and test their game, as opposed to people who are from foreign countries and from that don't have jobs or work graveyard or whatever.
And back to the idea of getting crafters in there. You can build the castle back up after you've taken it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is how else are you going to get it back to? Does it just automatically reappear as a big shiny new castle like 2 minutes after you've taken it? I mean, what happens within those 2 minutes?
As Miss Rabble said, it's basically Thidyanki. Thidyanki as a game experience was everybody rushed in. Eventually, a castle would fall. You basically you kick down the doors and you had to go kill a keep lord. You killed the keep lord, you gain control. As soon as you gain control, ping, all the walls were instantly fixed and the keep reset. But you could also continue to upgrade keeps, do things like that. So that would be kind of, I guess, a cool idea, is they could have it so that the keep keeps upgrading. And then once it conquered, sure, it might reset to fixed, but it's low level.
Narth is trolling again.
It gets knocked down, but it gets built up again. Yes. Thank you, Chumbawamba. From that tub.
Well, I'm hoping when this scenario comes out that the classes will have a couple more abilities than what we've seen, and like it'll be more of we're testing out the classes and destruction and all that stuff, all compassed together. But we'll see what happens.
That'd almost be another neat thing. Is not sure exactly what Bobo's saying, but he used the word tower, and I was like, triggered in my mind the Dark Age of Camelot, the keeps, and then there would be the outlying towers. And I think that would be kind of cool too, to give like smaller groups and multiple facets. And I always thought that system was pretty good at breaking up the Zerg temporarily as they would run out to fight the towers and then gain control, so that they could go use them as platforms to launch siege into the keep and things like that as well.
Bobo's saying basically you swarm in, it's tower offense, you're taking the tower, and then once you've taken the tower, then it becomes tower defense. And now that you've taken it, congratulations, now you get to hold it. And in that respect, you could kind of go into that.
Oh, definitely.
Gameplay of back and forth and, who can hold the most type of stuff and whatnot. So that way you're evaluated, as Bobo is saying, on both of your attack capacities and defense capabilities.
Yeah. The other kind of neat thing that you could potentially do is have the road to nowhere, as it were. Have a long, long road that is heavily defended. There's a keep on a hill, basically, and rough terrain that you have to run up these roads, and it's almost like tower defense against you. And each faction is kind of going up their own and trying to conquer the towers and everything like that. They gain points for doing that, and then then it's kind of a race too to get to the keep, and then who can beat up the keep and take it, and then you can do a reset, rinse, repeat. That would be kind of a cool capture objective kind of scenario too.
Yeah, I think that kind of reminds me, I don't know if you guys played Ion, but they had a dungeon where you would enter and the other faction would enter too, and you would race to the end of the dungeon. And like that was intense, because if somebody effed up, you're just like, screw it, dude. They're gonna beat us. Like, you know what I mean? It was crazy. It was crazy.
But the nice part is like, okay, even if they're just a little bit behind you, all of a sudden, did you kill the keep fast enough before they ass jammed you basically and started killing you from behind? So now you're crammed between the mobs and enemy forces.
So your YouTube channel, you've got a lot of again, primarily CU related material on there. I know you said that you kind of started it because you didn't see a whole lot of people keeping up with creating content for CU, but what about that drives you? What about that excites you for creating that content? Like,
for basically just content in general, or content for CU?
Any. Why do you like being a content creator?
I gotta be honest with you, man. Like I said, I played a lot of MMOs, and a lot of MMOs have shifted in directions that it's really hard to stick to nowadays. Like some games have really pruned classes, and they've done a lot of things that I don't necessarily agree with, and I don't want to get all political and stuff on it. But when Camelot Unchained came out, and they're kind of going back to these roots, and just the idea of Camelot Unchained and having all these classes, they're going to be different, and having these 3 realms, and just the idea that you're going to play this game, there's going to be no PvE. I don't have to go through some long story just to get to the PvP. I don't have to get all this gear just so the gear is going to be wiped 6 months from now. Like, they have all these ideas and these things that I really support and I really like.
Don't
And
you want to do the quest where you become the ultimate savior of the universe and everybody throws a party and worships you? And then the guy that's standing in line behind you clicks on it and now he's the ultimate master.
we all have the same legendary weapon, like
Amazing.
so that's kind of where a lot of my motivation comes from. And I'm not saying all these MMOs are bad. I've played all these and had my fun in them, and I still have fun in some of them. I do, but Camelot Unchained is just, it was one of those games that I felt like, yeah, dude, this is a game I can get behind. This is a game that's not going to prune all the classes. This is a game that's not going to reset my gear that I worked so hard for as a casual player, because I don't have all the time in the world like I used to. So when I get those 2-3 pieces of gear and they're like, oh, hey, next update, guess what? That's all gone. You got to do all this crap again and go through all these story quests again and do all this and all these time gates and things like that. It just drives me crazy. And
Your gear will break. You will be rebuilding your gear.
well, yeah, of course. But it's
But
not going
the
to
gear
be
itself
like I run a
doesn't
dungeon
become
150
irrelevant.
times to get that one piece of gear.
To then have it go
over
obsolete
again.
with the next dungeon patch.
You're going to have to run the dungeon 150 times to get the material to make the gear.
There you go. But I think that's where a lot of my motivation comes from. It's a lot of I really support this company. I really like I do like MJ, and I like the people behind it, and they are passionate and they do respond on the forums. And when they respond, it's not like this lawyered up crap that that they're not taking any responsibility for. They're taking responsibility for their mistakes. And I know this game has been in development for a long time, but
put up a PR person at this point because I feel that MJ sometimes doesn't know how to deliver the pill. Sometimes, I think Ragnarok could have been presented in a more positive way, and I think that MJ needed to not be as defensive. Like, it was basically like he had listened in a silo to how awesome this idea was, and then walked out and was like, I am a genius of geniuses. And then people were like, what shit is this garbage? And he's like, oh. And he's just like, I hate you all. You suck.
Yeah. I mean, but if you think about it, and trust me, when I saw that video, I was not happy. And that's why it took me a few days to make my video, because I was trying to make it very
non-biased.
But as we've seen on this stream, though, people love the rage. I mean, if you look at Malice when he gets on his soapbox and just starts screaming at his little camera there, people love that.
I've never done that. I don't know why you keep accusing me of doing that. I've never done that. I'm very
back me up, chat. He does that almost every time. Come on, Bobo. I know you'll back me on that one.
I don't know what y'all talking about.
So besides this fiasco and them taking so long to develop this game, I mean, I really don't have that many complaints, and I've come to an acceptance level. Like I've said on a few times, I went through like the 5 stages of grief, man. I went through all that shit when they went through rehabilitation or whatever they're calling it. I hated it. I hated them all. I wanted to get away from them all. I signed them off. And then eventually I realized, what other game is doing this? Like, what other game is going to have 3 factions that is going to do just all PvP? I mean, I know Crowfall is, but I don't know enough about Crowfall yet. I haven't done a lot of research on it. But other than that, I mean, ever since Guild Wars 2, after playing about a year of Guild Wars 2, I've been hopping around, man. I've been having a hard time sticking with an MMO.
So long term, do you kind of see yourself as one of the de facto content creators / here's an update for CU, come check it out type of channels, or is that not what you're going for?
To be honest, I want to keep my channel just CU, but I might branch out. But yeah, I kind of want to keep it CU, and when CU launches, whenever that's going to be,
then he'll actually be able to have real content to make.
I want to do guides, and I want to just be part of the community and keep this game alive, because how many games that we've played in this past, now they're on private servers. And it kind of sucks, but I don't ever really want to see that,
So if you're in chat, do us a favor, go to his YouTube channel. I've linked it there. Give him a follow, support him, check out his videos, engage with him in comments, all that kind of good stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rip WildStar, the only game that has ever banned me from playing it.
Well,
there's a
do I wanna
story
ask
here.
what you did?
There's a story here.
I was paying for the game using their cred system, which is you purchase with in-game gold would pay your monthly sub. They decided to hit my bank account instead. Well, I had several run-ins with their staff already where it took them weeks to get back to me on things. So this is my first time I learned that if you reverse charges on a on a game, they just permaban your account. You can go fuck yourself.
Oh.
So yeah, I reversed charges because I was like, hey, I already paid for this, and I sent in a ticket too, but I was like, I'm going to do this because I actually need that money now, not 3 weeks from now when you decide to read this ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the best part was then when they did finally get around to banning my account, they wouldn't allow me to even give the position away as guild leader or anything. And so the guild was locked in for over a month with no guild leader. And well, let's be real, everybody got so mad that I got banned that a 40-man guild just picked up and quit the game for the most part. We think about 10 people stayed, the other 30 just all quit. So they lost 30 accounts over their $15 a month that they wanted to take from me. So
yeah, I was gonna say $15. Like,
yep,
policies are policies. Gee, Gladius, you come in near the end.
This WildStar story again. I mean, hey, you want me to tell the other WildStar story where I accidentally deleted a whole entire guild? I mean, I had some of the best stories out of WildStar. Whoever decided to put a button next to kick player is disband guild. That's
same thing.
Kick a member, and it was like, but it was all weird, worded weirdly. So I wasn't sure which one it was supposed to be. So I clicked it, and it didn't even I think it asked me a basic confirm, is that what you want to do? Yeah, click. Not like, you are about to disband your guild, bro. Is this really what you want to do? And poof, and everybody's like, what happened? I'm in Discord. I'm like, or I think at the time it was with TeamSpeak. It was like
or something, right? Yeah.
It was what happened? Where's the guild? What do you mean? Oh God.
Oh God.
And, but this is where I learned that they were not going to be helpful, because even though they put a button right next to kick member, they put a disband guild button there, which the hell does that? And we lost our whole entire guild bank, and it took them 3 weeks to finally get around to tell me they weren't going to replace it. And they wouldn't give us any of our guild XP to rebuild the guild or anything. And so we went from one of the top ranking guilds on the server to having to completely start over because of a misclick. And
it was all Malice's fault. He had one job. One job.
Yep. Well, 2 jobs. Kick player. And apparently disband guild.
So, Swipper, what games are you currently engaging in the most, would you say, that you're actively playing?
I am trying my hardest to stick with Elder Scrolls Online. Now, I played that game when it first launched, and I dealt with the lag, I dealt with all that crap. I got to 50, I got my Templar up, and then I think a lot of my friends kind of bailed, so I eventually bailed. It was released for Xbox, so then I played it on Xbox, leveled up another 3 characters, then stopped, and now I'm coming back because it's it's nice because it's free to play because I can only get on like once or twice a week. Bobo's playing it with us, so it's a lot of fun. A couple of my buddies are playing it, so I'm doing my best to stick with it. I always get tempted to play something else, but I'm trying to stick with it so I can be good at the game, you know? So that is the game I'm playing.
Sounds like you're struggling.
A little bit, but I've been like I said, I've been struggling because like when I played Guild Wars 2, man, like that was such a different. The combat was so different to me. You know, there wasn't a holy trinity. You had to take care of yourself, and I loved it. So once I kind of got sick of Guild Wars 2, I think I've just been having a hard time. So you know, I don't know, but I'm sticking with it. So.
What
Johnny Clash, you have him on the spot. Is there anything specific that you want to ask him about stuff? He apparently loves the question I'm asking you because he's been looking for an answer for over a decade. So.
Oh yeah, he's a good friend of mine. So.
Always distract. We always. I mean, where we're at right now in games, we all kind of struggle to stick with games. So I'm always curious to know what people are playing, why they're playing it, and.
You have to realize there isn't basically an MMO on the market right now that isn't at least 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's horrible. Like, you should have, and I really wish the MMO genre would follow this model. Build a 5-year time arc for your game. This gives you a window to make cool story, do everything like that, tell your story, and then wrap it up. Make a new game if you want. Make a 2 of that game.
Yeah,
if you
use the things that you've learned, all the crap data that you've collected to make an even better game.
Right. You should burn that game every 5 years, restock it with new tech, new ideas, new systems, and then relaunch it. If you have a fan base and you got enough fans that are interested in your storyline, they'll be interested in your storyline when you decide to kick it up a notch, you know, and they'll come back. And I think it would keep games fresh as opposed to the fact that you're playing MMOs right now on, they had 5 years of development of themselves. So they're on 10-year-old tech right now. Whee! Like, I mean, like, and then you go play Anthem and you're like, oh, right. That's so gorgeous. Too bad they didn't have any writers or level designers. You know.
So Bobo says on that point, I think Crowfall can actually last a long time with the timed scenarios / objectives.
Honestly, Crowfall, like long term, is probably one of the neatest ideas I've seen in the MMO genre in a long time. To make instanced, as you call it, lobby-based kind of gaming, both engaging and long-term, and not feel shallow and like lose immersion. It's literally a game that decided to take that instance environment and make it part of their storyline of why it's that way. And that's what I consider really interesting. It's also because you don't have to spec into one character. You're not a character, you're a spirit crow. That's who you are. And when you go into a scenario, you go, I want to be a centaur warrior this match. And so you're a centaur warrior, and your spirit crow inhabits a centaur warrior, and that's what you are. And sure, you can build them up and whatever like that, whatever car you want to drive, as it were. But and I also like how the looting works. There's going to be PvE and PvP in the scenarios, especially depending on how long the scenario, what type of scenario you're in. Some of them are supposed to be like 4 to 6 month long campaigns. And based on those campaigns, you're going to have access to finding neat loot. So say you find an epic sword or something like that, right? Well, all your gear gets wiped at the end of this campaign, but you get to pick like one thing to keep. And that becomes your thing, and so you get to go, oh, I found an epic sword. Great. I don't have any epic swords or whatever. And so I go, you slam it in your vault instead of keep playing with it so that it survives to the next campaign. So a lot of really neat ideas like that I think are going to be kind of revolutionary in the game space.
Yeah, you're making me want to look at this game more, that's the last thing I need right now. I need to stick to the game. You just
Sorry,
stick to a
Johnny
game,
Clash.
Well, think of it this way: it's not out either. It'll be out in a year.
No, but you can play. You can play more of Crowfall right now than you can of CU.
Any
So.
CU.
Yeah.
You could.
They're
take
running
all the games
24/7
available in
servers.
CU and Ragnarok, and still that would be half the content that they have in Crowfall right now for testing.
Your friends are going to hate us now because now you're going to jump to another game.
Yeah, oh yes. They've been dealing with it for years, so it's all good, man.
Cyberpunk 2077.
You know what Cyberpunk 2077 is actually? It's a portent. All the other MMOs will be launching in 2077, so you better go play this game.
That's what he said. There's Cyberpunk 2077 and CU Crowfall Star Citizen in 2077.
Dude, I literally have this old guy in my guild who is talking about having to will his Star Citizen ship collection because he may not make it.
He needs a blog about that or something, man. He's got to put it out there. That is too funny.
It's like, I've been waiting 7 years. I'm gonna probably wait another 7 more. This is bull crap. I ain't gonna live that long. Oh yeah, I will definitely play Cyberpunk. I'm just a Cyberpunk junkie. Like, I love the Deus Ex games and all the other anything that's my jam. That's my genre, and I really wish that someone would write an MMO or pay me to write an MMO. I've got one written, guys. Just give me some money.
I'm saying, just need to make yourself a little studio there, Malice.
Yep, and win the lottery. I know.
Kickstarter. There you go.
If I could get enough, my other project on the side is if that kicks off,
you could buy the CU engine.
For you, I don't need the CU engine. I don't need 10,000 people on a screen.
But then you won't have to do Linuxification. Sorry, I just had to get the word in.
Damn it, I got no alcohol. Everybody must drink. I have to refill.
Ooh. So we exhausted your idea pool of stuff for Ragnarok there?
Yeah, I mean, overall, guys, do you think they're pretty good ideas? Do you think you could see them implementing this, or do you think it's just
I don't
see what happens?
The biggest concern I have with a couple of them is that they change the actual. So in game development, you write your scope of your project and exactly what you're. It's
which is
like
in MJ's head. It's not actually written. It's in MJ's head.
He actually writes the stuff down. I have in fact had the pleasure of reading one of his previous games. Design documents that never went live, so they exist. But you gotta have your locked-in mission statement, and if you don't have your locked-in mission goals, then you end up with lots of content creep and a lot of other stuff like that turns a project into a nightmare to develop, like Camelot Unchained and Star Citizen. But he wants to get this game out by the end of the year, so that means he has to focus on his mission statement, which means I wouldn't expect to see things that are going to be like actual PvP or anything like that. I just don't think that's the direction he would go. Whether it would be cool or not is irrelevant to what he's going to give us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun, and
definitely a blast having you. I hope everyone else enjoyed the show. Do we have any idea what we're doing for Community Hall? Nope.
Nope.
People like asking me this question for MMO Grind. What you plan? I'll figure it out 10 minutes before the show starts.
I mean, really, for the town hall, it always depends on who signs up to be on. and then if there are any hot topics that are floating around that week.
Yeah, I definitely want to try to drive us hopefully away from CU. I think we've kind of beat that dead horse at this point. So
Yeah.
But
I think
unfortunately, there's not a lot to talk about.
Well,
you guys had a really good idea before.
Which was?
You were going to talk about games that were maybe going to be releasing or giving updates about that. I thought that was a good idea for people that aren't really following a lot of these games.
Yeah, we could probably basically semi-rehash our New Year's show. We actually did a New Year's ball drop, just Zaylin and I, and we talked for like 3 hours about all of the upcoming games and everything, and we were like, wow, everything coming out in 2020 is just to be announced, or it's like packages and new expansions and everything like that for games that have been out for 5 years. Yay!
And all the top games for 2019 had a release date of 2011 or 2013. That was the most popular release date for those things. It was pretty brutal, but I mean, it just shows you that some games can be made and are quite good. So we'll see what we're doing for Town Hall. I know next Tuesday for MMO Grind, we've got Trev on here, the builder of Cherry Keep. We get to talk to him about what it's like to build in these types of games, specifically within CU.
In our thesis, be on for that show because you got all the questions. Well, and you have the most knowledge in the guild about Cube, so because you're our builder.
So we'll explore Cube and what that's like and what that's all about and go from there. So
we might want to see if we can pull up another window. If we could actually do. Actually, do we have permission from MJ if we could actually go into Cube and stream it?
I don't think so, but
we'll have to see if we can get that.
Yeah, it might be something that would be helpful to CU's brand right now.
I could agree.
So anyway, thank you for coming out, everybody. Appreciate y'all being here. Again, if you haven't already, I'll link it again. Please go and give Swipper a follow on his YouTube page. Support each other in this lovely world of gaming. So,
and you all have a great night, and thanks for coming out to the MMO Grind.
Yep. Peace out, everybody. Thank you.